everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Warrior Wisdom Wednesday. I am excited to be here. I'm excited to just teach you on today. I was just getting a couple of things in place in the background because technology can be technology. Amen, somebody. Amen, somebody. So, listen, how y'all be? How y'all be? How y'all be? Because it's been a minute. It's been a whole week. It's been a whole 7 days since we last spoke. Yeah. So make sure when you come on in, make sure you just let me know where you're tuning in from so I can shout you out. Make sure you give StreamYard access so I can actually see your name and you're not just a user that's showing up. Because I like to, hey girl, hey. I like to just call y'all out and, see how you're doing. Right. So again, this is Warrior Wisdom Wednesday. My name is Ayana Henderson. I am the generational change agent. And it is my mission to help as many Black women as I can accelerate their healing so that they can live a life that they are proud of and they can help their children do the same. Right. We're always talking about generational wealth and generational legacy, but I also believe that generational health is a part of that as well. And we actually do this in using a specific framework that allows you to expedite your healing as quick as 6 months. So imagine, years and years and years of therapy, and now you're reducing it to just 6 months. And we can go ahead and get that done and get that rocking and rolling. But before we do that, and before I share any information on how to do that, we are in our series called The Power of Your Voice. The Power of Your Voice. And so every year for October, November, December, I always like to end the year doing a power series, just so that you are reminded going into your next season, going into your next year, just how incredibly powerful you are. And so we start that by doing the power of your voice. Then we move to the power of your value. And then we hit the power of your vision, because it's hard to cast a vision if you don't have the words to articulate it because you don't believe in your value. Right. And so that is why I do the power series. Right. And so today we're talking about navigating the negative narratives. And so what are negative narratives? Negative narratives are the bad stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. So these are things that maybe somebody has said something and we told ourselves a story about what they said. Now, if you followed me and you have tuned into the lives, you would know that one of the stories that I tell is I was in the fifth grade. I was just cleaning my glasses. I was in the fifth grade, and my family always held, our Christmas celebrations, and the kids always brought their report cards. To show off all the hard work that they had done for the semester prior leading to Christmas. And my aunt was too busy to look at mine, and I was really proud because I really worked really, really hard, and she didn't have time to pay attention to it. And I took that as nobody in my family cared about me. And we'll talk about how we jump to such broad conclusions. How do we get from one place to another, right? And so negative narratives, they are the hypercritical self-talk that plays on a loop in our heads, right? It's statements like, I'm not good enough, I never do anything right, or I'm a failure. It's a fact that all humans make this mistake. Like, this isn't isolated to like some people never do it. This person, only this group of people or this type of race does it. We're all prone to have at one point in our lives said something super hypercritical of ourselves, about ourselves, to ourselves. And so, I'm here because I really want you to know that you can actually do something about it. You don't have to stay stuck in this narrative, right? So how do these narratives affect the power of your voice, right? Well, here's the thing. You have silent thoughts, right? And so your words, when you're thinking them, are actually just silent thoughts. And so we know that your thoughts, they can become your beliefs, and then your beliefs can become your actions. And so it's really just that, right? So your thoughts are silent, but they're powerful, right? They are the words that transcribe your beliefs, they dictate how you feel, and they tell you what to do. This is why having the language and having the power and having the ability to make sure that you sort of corral this negative narrative, these negative self-talk statements that you say to yourself, or these stories that you actually make up in your head, you try your best to control them. And I'm going to give you a recipe to be able to do that, right? So what are 4 ways that our negative narrative actually shows up? Well, the first is by personalizing. I'm guilty of all 4 of these, and you'll see once I share the example. So, personalizing is basically when you do the it's not you, it's me, right? And it becomes your mantra. So, if something bad occurs, you automatically start blaming yourself. And what does that look like? For example, if you send a text to a group, right, and no one actually replies, you'll think everybody is mad at me, everybody is this, that, and the third with me. And you start telling yourself and building a story around what you believe everybody else is doing, when in fact they could just be really busy and haven't had a time or chance to get back to you. Or maybe they looked at it. We're guilty of this too. We reply in our head, we think we've replied in real life, and then it doesn't happen, right? And so we forget to actually respond. The second is filtering. With filtering, you magnify the negative aspects of a situation, and then you filter out the positive ones. So what does that look like? For example, if you're trying to save money and you go over your budget by $50, you get caught in thinking about the $50 that you went over budget with versus the $200 that you've already actually saved, right? The goal was to save money. But now you filtered out the fact that you actually have saved money, and you're so focused on the $50 that you went over budget. So now it's a half glass empty, half glass full. You're filtering out the good and you're only focusing on the bad. The third is catastrophizing. So with the catastrophizing, you automatically anticipate the worst. Like you go from one side of the pendulum to the other. You just swing all the way to the other side. And, the worst of the worst is happening, right? So, for example, you're on the way to your office, the train gets stopped underground, and you immediately assume you are stuck for hours, for absolute hours. Like, very worst case scenario, you automatically jump to that particular thought process. And then you start telling yourself, and guess what? Now you're aggravated. Now you're angry. Now you're being nasty and rude and condescending to people because you've told yourself, this is the absolute worst. The absolute worst is about to happen. I'm going to experience the worst in this situation. There's no way I can make the best of it. I don't have cell reception, X, Y, and Z. So you start going down this rabbit hole of all things negative. And then the last is polarizing. So with polarizing, you see things as either good or bad. Like there's no gray, there's no middle ground, right? It's the feeling that you have to be perfect or you're a total failure. So there is no lesson learned, right? There's always, it's just win or lose. But there is no in between to say, oh my God, like that didn't quite work out, but what did I learn? Okay, so with tech, I know this, with this, I know that, with this, I know that. You either go from one end to the other end, and it's always black or white with you. There is never any gray area. And so what does that look like? If you've been getting caught up, right? If you've been getting up early all week, and then one morning you feel the need to get more sleep and you hit the snooze button, suddenly you feel and you tell yourself that I'm a lazy person. Lazy people don't do this. I'm absolutely being lazy. Versus recognizing that maybe today my body just needs a little extra rest. I have been going hard the last couple of days. I'm going to enjoy an extra 15 minutes of sleep. Hopefully it doesn't turn into 30. That's what happened to me this morning. But we're in a judge-free zone and we're in a safe space. So I know that you guys aren't judging me. Amen. Amen. Right? And so, those are the 4 types of ways. So we have personalizing, filtering, catastrophizing, and polarizing. Those are the four ways in which our negative narratives start to seep in our minds, in our spirits, eventually in our beliefs, and then they alter how we talk to ourselves and then how we see ourselves. So this is why I do the power of the voice first, because if you can corral this, if you can hone this in and start to work on how you tell your what you say to yourself. There was a series that I did as part of the power of your voice last year, and it was called excuse me, it was I forgive you for what you said. I forgive me for what I said when I was hurt, because we're likely to share things and say things with ourselves because we feel some sort of shame, we feel some sort of guilt, we feel some sort of betrayal. And so the way that we'll talk to ourselves is very damaging. And so if you don't correct the way that you talk to yourself, you're never going to really be able to see the full beauty of who you are and what you're capable of, simply because you are saying all of these negative things to yourself. Now, it usually starts, we don't wake up in the morning saying, oh my God, I'm just going to be super negative and super hard on myself. It usually starts because someone has said something to us. And when they say something to us, we do two things. One, it invokes a feeling in us. So if someone says something nice, we feel happy, we feel joy, we feel good, we feel, all these different types of good emotions. But if somebody is critical of us, if somebody is harsh of us, we feel shame, we feel guilt, we feel embarrassment, we feel humiliation, we feel exposed. And so when we're in these particular types of emotions, we're likely to do the second thing, tell ourselves a story. We are likely to tell ourselves something that is not true based on what somebody has said about us, right? So, one of the narratives that I share a lot that has impacted me quite a bit is I was told by someone that I cared about, I loved, was very close to, is very close to me, and they said, um, "You will always be broke. You will never be able to take care of your kids, and you'll never be able to put a roof over their head." And I held on to that for about 5 or 6 years, right? And so found myself always trying to prove that I could be in a position to take care of my kids, that I didn't have to ask for help, that I could put a roof over their head, that I could, take care of them, because I was in a rough season at that time, right? And so this was a narrative, right? A story that was spoken over me. But what happened was, because I didn't fully see my value, because I didn't fully believe that I could do it, I took on that negative narrative that someone spoke over me as my own. And I started to, as they say, a trauma response. I started to put out in the universe that it's going to be hard for me to take care of these kids. I don't know if I can actually do it. And so self-doubt creeps in. My confidence was shot. Like it was, and it's one of the areas for me that is my ultimate trigger, being a good mother, right? That's my trigger button. And so when that's stepped on, it exposes so much for me. So when I heard that narrative being spoken over me, that you'll always be broke, you'll never be able to take care of your children, and you'll never be able to put a roof over their head, it literally crushed me. It literally crushed me, right? And I experienced the personalization of it. I experienced the filtering of it. I experienced the catastrophizing of it. And I experienced the polarizing of it, right? So I shared with you that I was going to share with you 5 ways that you can cancel out this negative narrative that people may have spoken over you and that at some point you actually believed and you partnered with. Now, I talk a great deal about having partnered with the lies of the enemy. This is part of it. This is what it can look like. Now, I'm not saying that that person was the enemy, but he used this person to speak this over me in that particular moment, because he knew how it was going to impact and infect me. And it did for 5 or 6 years, right? So the first step is become aware of what you say to yourself, right? Check your inner critic. Now, here's the thing. We all have an inner critic. We all have a part of us inside of ourselves that's super judgy, super critical, super hypersensitive. And that is the part of us that gets tapped when we hear something about ourselves. And then that inner critic, right, starts to make up a story that we continue to tell ourselves and perpetuate over time, right? And so the second step is ask yourself, is there any truth to what was said about me? So again, with this narrative, you'll always be broke. You'll never be able to take care of your children, and you'll never be able to put a roof over their head, right? What was the truth? The truth was that I have taken care of my children. Up until that point, I've done my absolute best to take care of my children. There was always a roof over their head. There was always a roof over their head. There were agreements made that made it so, because rents were super high. So, I made the adjustments and I made the best decisions to make sure the kids always had a roof over their head. We never ended up in a shelter. We never ended up on the street, and we never had to sleep in our car. And I'm not saying that, I don't want to make any other mom feel bad if those are the choices, that you've had to make sure your family survived and your family was taken care of. I commend you and I shout you out for doing the absolute best that you can do in the moments where you feel most challenged, where your back is up against the wall, but you recognize you still have people to take care of, right? The truth was that I wasn't broke. I had a job. I was taking care of the kids. I was making sure they had food on the table, clothes on their back, that they were in activities, that they had after school activities, they had time with their friends, they had time with their family, right? And so I wasn't broke. That was also a truth, right? And then yeah, so like those were some of the truths that came out of it. So that automatically starts to dispel what people speak over you and what you start to believe as a result. The fear, they spoke to the fear. So they spoke to the fact that I believed I was going to struggle taking care of 4 children by myself. They spoke to that fear that I was never going to be able to do it, that I was never going to be able to get on my feet to actually do it myself, that I was always going to have to receive some sort of handout, etc. Right? And so the third step is keep the meat and eat the bones, right? If there is any truth to what they're actually saying, keep that, use it to work and better yourself, and throw everything else out. So that doesn't mean all that they're saying is true, but there could be some truth. There's room for some truth to actually be there. They just may have presented that information in a very harsh, critical, or judgmental manner that made you feel shame, guilt, embarrassment, humiliation. And so, you want to try to rectify that, right? And then the fourth step is there an alternative explanation, or is there an alternative narrative, right? And so like I said, with my scenario where this was spoken over me, I know that it was said to hurt me. I know that it was said to make me feel bad about myself. I know that it was said in retaliation of something I had said. I know that it was said um, to expose, certain areas, and it was used against me because that was the particular part of my life that I struggled with the most. And so those were alternative explanations, right? But it was used in a malicious way and with ill intent, with a desire to hurt me. So that was, again, part of the truth, right? And so I know that God is my foundation. I know that he uses all things for my good. And I know that even when he's exposing some pretty hard things about me, that he will use it to help me see things about me that are actually good. And he will show me how I can improve in those areas. And the last and final step is rewrite the narrative in a positive light. I will always take care of my children. I will always do what I can for their needs, to meet their needs with the best of my know-how, with the best of my skill set. I will always make sure that they have a roof over their head, even if they don't like the roof. But I will always make sure that they have a roof over their head and that they are taken care of. That's the truth. That's the rewriting of the narrative. I will always find a way to make sure that they are taken care of, right? And so I'm sure that there are certain narratives that you have struggled with, certain narratives that people have spoken over you that have touched your, core trigger, and have started to you started to tell yourself certain stories based on what you were hearing from them. And so, I just wanted to leave you with these steps. One, become aware of what you're saying to yourself. Like, what is the story that you're saying? What is the narrative? Ask yourself if there's any truth to what's being said. Keep the meat and eat the bone. I mean, keep the oh Lord, I put that up there wrong. Child, keep the meat. Yes, eat the meat. It's Wednesday. Y'all will forgive me. Y'all will forgive me. Eat the meat and throw away the bones. Yes, honey. Let's change that. Eat the meat and throw away the bones. Yes, we only keep the things that stick, that need to, that are necessary. Ask yourself, is there any alternative explanation? And rewrite the narrative in a positive light, right? So this was the part 2 series, right? This was the voice victimology. This is the way that we make ourselves a victim. This is the way that we play the victim in our own lives. This is the way we keep ourselves as a victim. And so when we start to change the narrative, when we start to change the light, we then can see our own light, our own value, and just how incredibly awesome that we all are. And so this is part of a larger conversation that is happening tonight. Super excited about it. It is called the You Won't Break My Soul Masterclass. That is happening tonight, people, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You want to make sure that you are in the building. You want to make sure that you grab your seat. It is absolutely 100% free. And I want to just share with you really the importance of soul care. If you're trying to figure out how do you make yourself a priority, if you're trying to figure out how am I getting in my own way, how can I stop getting in my own way? If you're looking at your relationships like this is a drag, I know it can be different. I know it can be better. I know I can get more. I know I deserve more. You definitely want to be in the building. You definitely want to make sure that you grab your seat. And so how do you do that? You are going to head over to warriorwomanhood.com/warrior events, and you're going to save your seat. You're going to head over again to warriorwomanhood.com/warrior events, and you are going to save your seat. Do not forget to register for this masterclass. It is a one-of-a-kind soul care class, and you want to make sure that you are in the building, because you don't have to live the rest of your life struggling. You don't have to live the rest of your life just going, by the wayside, living by default, letting life happen to you. You don't have to do any of those things. You absolutely have 100% control and power to be able to take care of yourself and live in a way that you desire to live. So I hope to see you all in this masterclass tonight. I thank you all so very much for tuning in. For those watching the replay, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to engage. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you're thinking of anything or what comes to mind as you are watching this replay. So, ladies and gentlemen, it has been my absolute pleasure. I will see you all next week for another Warrior Wisdom Wednesday. And until next Wednesday, take care. I'll see you then. Bye now.